What a buffoon. What an actual buffoon. This is so embarrassing. It's a 15-minute dunk and she's making herself look like a idiot for anybody who takes 2 seconds to fact check her claims. Dare to dream, guys. There's nothing you can't accomplish. If Anna Kasparian can become a successful like news media pundit, then you can do anything. The sky's the limit. Anna Kasparian responds to Sam Seder and Emma Vigeland.
Last week, Emma Vigeland and Sam Seder of The Majority Report thought it would be fun to put out a more than 18-minute long video chastising and mocking me for my willingness to admit that I was wrong, in part for downplaying the possibility of Donald Trump implementing Project 2025 upon winning the election.
People have admitted that they made a mistake.
All right, back on TYT, checking in with you guys. More news.
So I just want to address something. I was wrong about Project 2025. MAGA hates Project 2025, and I thought that Donald Trump actually cared about his base because in his first term, he seemed to be swayed by his base. He seemed to listen to his base.
Wait a second. Wait. MAGA hates Project 2025?
Where's the evidence of that?
What? What is this MAGA that they speak of?
I actually don't think Anna's wrong there because polling for Project 2025 was abysmal, even with Republicans. I don't want to make a habit of sticking up for Anna Kasparian. I think she's right though. I think like your standard Republican voter, at least according to the polls, like shortly before the election, were broadly opposed to Project 25. Project 2025, I think had like 8% approval ratings or whatever across the board. Now, if we're talking about like Trump's super loyal MAGA voters, like we'll say 15 to 20% of the country, that's what I would guess is like there's 15 to 20% of the country that are really enthusiastic Trump supporters. They probably like all like Project 2025. So if that's what Sam means when he says MAGA, then you could say that he's right as well. But yeah, I guess it's a little complicated.
You know what? Sam is totally right. It is he who understands the MAGA base better than anyone else. I mean, the guy goes out of his way to engage in dialogue with Trump voters. He seeks to understand where their hearts and minds are at. Here he is touting his openness to understanding people who vote differently than he does.
We can't take the power back without talking to Trump voters and making them realize their mistake. Well, wait.
So let's pander to them first.
Pick your battles doesn't have anything to do with talking to Trump voters. Yeah. Or not. Or
flattering false
consciousness. You've just decided to make some weird connection there. Yeah. We can't take the power back without talking to Trump voters and making them realize their mistake. Actually, no, we can't. There's millions and millions of other people who need to be motivated to get into the fight.
Sam's right about this, in my opinion. I think your time would be way better spent talking to voters that are, I mean, I'm going to say that, I don't know how to extrapolate this. I'm just going to make a number up. I'm going to say that 60 to 70% of the country honestly lean more like apolitical. They don't spend a lot of time reading about politics, watching political content. That's the norm. Like if you were to ask people in your family, it's a good question for chat. Like if you were to ask people in your family, right, your nuclear family and your extended family, what percentage of your family do you think like pays attention to politics like a lot? In my family, it's only my dad. Everybody else in my family, I have 3 sisters. None of them really pay attention to politics. My brother-in-law doesn't really pay attention to politics. My nieces and nephews don't really pay attention to politics. It's literally just me and my dad. We're like Batman and Joker, the dynamic there. Like him and I, we pay attention to politics every day. Most people don't. And you're going to, if you're going to try to like prioritize your time, like how would my time be best spent if I want to get people to vote Republican in smaller numbers in 2028 or 2026 in the midterms? That time's going to be way better spent talking to people that are, we'll just say like more moderate or / apolitical. I've had conversations with how many MAGA people over the years? Thousands, literally thousands. I'm going to guess I've spoken with 2 to 3,000, maybe if we're including like Twitter exchanges, 10,000, maybe 20,000. It's not that it never happens. I've definitely had people reach out in my email and say like, hey, I just want you to know I was like super on the Gamergate thing and I was a big Trump guy in 2016, and watching your content, I'm now like a registered Democrat. I get those letters. I get those emails. Not all the time, but sometimes, right? But they're going to be the exception, not the rule. Like most of the people who believe a certain way right now, they're still going to believe that way in 2026 and in 2028. And then you have, again, I'm just going to make up a number, 10 to 30 million people in this country that are not really ideologically married one way or the other and can be persuaded. You know, there are people that vote, you know, Democrat in one election, and the next election they vote Republican, and then the one after that they vote Democrat. Those people exist in very large numbers. I feel like a lot of people on the left think that swing voters are a myth that don't really exist, but they do. They are real. They're very, very real. And so to that end, I think Sam's actually right. I don't know how much value there is at this point in engaging with MAGA people. I think there is value for creators to do it. I think there is value for there to be public discussions in this new age of social media. We do need to have sort of ambassadors of the left that are willing to engage in debate with MAGA people. I think that is going to be a really effective way to change people's minds. You want the right people doing that, and you want people that are like well equipped to have those arguments. But as far as your day-to-day life, I'm not sure if you're gonna, like, if you have like a super MAGA coworker, I'm not sure you're gonna change their minds by like, hey, did you see this article, and did you see that, and did you see what Trump is doing over here, and did you see what Elon's doing? I don't know how many minds you're gonna change doing that. These people they kind of work backwards. Like MAGA and Trump are gonna save the country from the left that has been destroying the country for decades, and then they work backwards from there. And so from there they go down to like Doge, and they see what Doge is doing, and everything that Doge is doing must be good because it's for that purpose of saving America. And then you go down to like, you know, the cabinet officials and, you know, like rescinding this clause of Title IX to take away protections for queer kids or whatever. And so like when they get there, they've already reached their conclusion. MAGA is good. They're saving the country. And therefore what these people are doing must be good. And it just goes down and down and down and down. Like they will find a way to tell you that literally everything that the current administration is doing is for a good purpose. It may appear chaotic, but there's actually some 5D chess going on, and they're saving the country. And unless you can get rid of that core belief, MAGA is good and they're saving the country, unless you can attack that, unless you can undermine that position, you're never going to get any traction convincing them about, you know, like what the Secretary of Defense, you're never going to like each individual thing. You're never going to like get them to concede. Okay, that's bad. You know, like firing people that are in charge of our nuclear stockpile and then rehiring them days later when you realize they were necessary. Like, okay, maybe that's not super efficient, but it's necessary. You know, they will find a way to justify anything, right?
Is that I am coming from the Polymarket Studios?
Insulting them and lumping them all together as the worst among them doesn't help either. I don't know when we have done that with all 78 million people, but I got news for you. The percentage of those who voted for Mitt Romney, they can suck my. I don't care about any of that. Like, I don't care about any of that.
Astute analysis. There you have it. Sam Seder, noted expert on Trump voters who he won't talk to and has no interest in understanding. Got it. But it's worth asking why Trump would repeatedly deny supporting Project 2025 on the campaign trail. Was it to appeal to?
I don't need to understand like diehard MAGA people. There's no necessity to me understanding like the prototypical like MAGA voter. That's like if you were shot with a poisoned arrow, instead of just taking the arrow out and treating the wound, you decide to go knock on every door in your neighborhood to ask like who shot this arrow. I don't need to understand the MAGA voter to understand the consequence of MAGA voters. And so therefore it is a Buddhist parable. Somebody asked Buddha if there was a God, and Buddha replied by saying that the question was unnecessary, but it pertains here. It's relevant in this context. I at this point, I think I have a decent understanding of MAGA, to be honest with you. I'll bet you like if you brought like a random MAGA person into my Discord right now, I could tell them all the positions that they hold. I could list like 2 dozen issues and then tell them, okay, this is what I think you believe. So I feel like of all these years of being engaged in politics during the Trump era, I think I have like a decent understanding of like where they're at. You may get small variations here and there. So you might get like a super Trump MAGA person that's also, you know, like open to more immigration or whatever. Or you might get a super pro MAGA person who is like, who more commonly might be like, okay, well, we should defend Ukraine. They are our partner, but they've just sort of made peace with the fact that Trump's not going to do that.
Libs like Sam Seder, or maybe it's because he knew his base doesn't support large swaths of the policy agenda laid out in the project's 900-page document. So to say that Trump is implementing Project 2025 isn't even fully accurate because, well, there's a lot that he doesn't agree with that's in that document and said that he won't actually pursue after getting elected.
I think recent analysis suggests that 2/3 of Trump's actions so far have been in line with what was laid out in the mandate for leadership, or what's colloquially known as Project 2025 and 2024, that was released in 2024, or rather, I think it was released in 2023. Yeah, again, recent analysis suggests that everything that Trump has done so far, it's about 2 out of 3 of his actions have been perfectly in line with Project 2025. The big ones are like hollowing out the administrative state, purging our institutions and agencies of non-Trump loyalists, and then staffing these agencies with Trump loyalists. That's like the big one, right? Tracker says he's implemented 1 out of 3. So, okay, I was wrong about that. It's not 2 out of 3, but 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3 is a lot. That's a lot. 1 out of 3 actions that you've taken have been in furtherance of the goals laid out in Project 2025. That's a lot. That is a lot, okay?
He said these things. For example, Project 2025 wants to eliminate every single tax bracket and replace it with just 2 brackets, 15% for anyone making under $168,000 annually and 30% for those earning more than that. If this is the first time you're hearing about it, it's because Trump hasn't mentioned it and isn't likely to pursue it. And are we going to pretend like Trump read a 900-page document? Really? He does, however, plan to extend his
Well, this is just stupid. Trump is going to surround himself with policy advisors, and those advisors will be more informed of the specific policy line item agenda things in Project 2025. The idea that because it's unlikely that Trump himself read that entire 900-page document, and therefore it's ridiculous to suggest that he's pursuing a lot of the things that are in that document, is just kind of stupid. Like, it's just a nonsensical point.
2017 tax cuts for individual filers. Trump also wants to lower the corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%, which I've spoken out against repeatedly. Project 2025 also proposes cuts to Medicaid. What does Trump have to say about that?
Social Security won't be touched other than...
No! Now the premise here that Anna seems to be adhering to is that we should take Trump at his word. What a silly thing to suggest. Anna, he proposed substantial cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security spending in every single budget that his administration proposed the first term of his presidency. I'm going to repeat that. In every single budget that Donald Trump's first administration proposed, they included substantial cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security spending. Why, Anna? Why? Why would we take Trump at his word here? Justify that. Why should I take Donald Trump at his word? Are you suggesting that he's an honest broker most of the time?
Fraud or something, we're going to find it's going to be strengthened, but won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is going to be touched.
Nothing.
You don't have to. Now, if there are illegal migrants in the system, we're going to get them out of the system and all of that.
There aren't.
But it's not going to be touched.
There aren't.
I mean, well, look, touching Medicare or Medicaid, super unpopular. And maybe Trump is just saying that publicly while behind closed doors, he's telling Republicans who are currently working on a budget.
Maybe, Anna, maybe.
That they should totally slash Medicaid, right? Well, it turns out No, wrong. That's not what's happening.
Oh
Trump
my
had previously
God.
weighed in privately against cutting too heavily into Medicaid, telling House Republicans at a closed-door meeting earlier this month that he wants.
My dude, how did you not miss this is a very key phrase right here. You just showed a clip of him talking to Sean Hannity saying there would be no cuts to Medicaid. And then privately he's saying, well, don't cut too heavily into Medicaid. Does she not understand the fucking glaring contradiction here? This is incredible.
To be very careful with Medicaid. His public remarks on Hannity represented a broader and more forceful assertion of that red line. Nonetheless, Trump's agenda and Project 2025 do have a great deal of overlap, especially in regard to the dismantling of the administrative state, which his base actually does like. But how could anyone be in favor of scaling back on government agencies that are full to the brim with unelected career bureaucrats who get to create, judge, and
Bro, she is indistinguishable from like just right-wing social media pundits at this point. You could take this exact language and then copy and paste it into a Ben Shapiro opening monologue and you wouldn't bat an eye. Is she just full MAGA at this point? Is she left-wing at all? Is when she did the whole like why I left the left thing, was she being literal?
enforce their own policies and rules. How could this be?
A scathing review of the CDC, finding the agency repeatedly botched its pandemic response and failed to meet the moment of crisis. The CDC long under fire for its guidance on masking and vaccines over the last 2 years.
This is really confusing.
There are more than 10,000 chemicals and additives allowed in food in the U.S., often in small amounts, but many have not been evaluated by the FDA in decades. The majority are safe, but some chemicals allowed here have been banned overseas after research has linked them to cancer and developmental or behavioral issues.
Is the food industry basically policing itself?
I would say yes. 45% of the FDA's overall budget now comes from the companies it's reviewing, and 60.
What's her name? She's a character too.
5% of the FDA's budget specifically for human drug regulation comes directly from Big Pharma itself.
The historic $2 billion payout by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to black farmers and other farmers of color who experience discrimination when applying to the USDA's farm loan program.
Why would she include this in her montage when Donald Trump is like writ large ending all of those programs?
The lender, who was a federal employee, who was employed by a government, spat on me. I was called the N-word from this same official.
So I do a lot of work.
What is he saying? He's alleging that an FDA official spit on him and called him the N-word?
Surrounding environmental justice issues here locally as far as activism goes. And I've done research fellow at the local EPA. The admin at the time when I was a research fellow were primarily comprised of people who were affiliated or directly coming from the Department of Defense. And they put in a lot of restrictions as to like what the researchers get to, which PFAS compound the researchers get to study.
Right.
Is the EPA turning a blind eye to these dangerous forever chemicals, and why?
Unfortunately, the EPA is not turning off the tap of these chemicals from the polluters who knew they were poisoning their workers in the 60s and their neighbors in the 70s and ultimately all of us. And they're continuing to allow these polluters to send their PFAS wastes not only into our rivers, but to our wastewater treatment plants, where then they are then sold to farmers who unknowingly contaminate their fields.
Whoopsies. Now, if you watch Beavis and Butthead on the Vanguard YouTube channel, which the Majority Report hilariously treats as some...
Whoa, goddamn. Vanguard boys catching strays here.
Authoritative source, you'd think that TYT is totally in favor of the Trump administration gutting federal agencies. Except we're not. two things can be true at the same time. These agencies have been deeply corrupted, do engage in waste, and should be reformed. But treating the federal workforce as if they're Twitter employees is a disastrous way to handle it, as we've been learning in recent weeks. But let's hear what Emma has to say.
What have we been learning in recent weeks? What's the point she's making?
About my on-air correction.
It is not the prediction. People make predictions all the time.
Right, I was wrong in my prediction about the election, but
this is not making some type of poly market bet here.
Yeah.
Where the outcome we can't tell.
Yeah.
There was an abundance amount of evidence of this, and even if your opinion, not prediction, opinion was, I can't see them doing this. This is pretty radical. The idea that you would mock people for believing it and saying it was a conspiracy theory. The people had Trump derangement syndrome. I'm sorry. Give me a break.
Apologies, I forget that Sam usually doesn't let Emma get a word in edgewise, but I'll address what she said in that video in a
That's literally not even true, but okay.
second. But before I do, did I, Sam? Did I mock voters who were worried about Project 2025? Because I don't remember doing that. What I do recall is chastising Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party for offering nothing to voters other than incessant fear-mongering about Trump. I also remember criticizing members of the media who simply regurgitated anything the Democratic Party claimed. I also found it fascinating that as the whole of the Democratic Party was engaging in said fear-mongering, they were also playing part in a massive cover-up about Biden's mental decline. I mean, just think about it. Democracy is—
How are we going to call it fear-mongering? Like what did the lib establishment fear-monger about with respect to Trump that hasn't happened yet? You know what I mean? Because it seems like all the things that we were saying about Trump in terms of the threat that he posed and all the possible terrible things that he could do, like 90% of them have happened already so far. We're only a month into the presidency. He pardoned every single January 6th person. He appointed the author of Project 2025 to head OMB. He has announced, well, this one took us all off guard. It's actually even worse. Announced that he wants to basically annex Gaza. He fired the inspectors general of these various agencies whose job is to act as a watchdog entity. I mean, what fear-mongering hasn't happened yet?
under threat. We, the Democrats, insist that this corpse stay in the race to give us the best chance of beating Trump and saving democracy.
I mean, it's not we. It was Joe Biden's personal decision to stay in the race. It's not like the Democratic Party was coercing him to do that. I'm sure you had plenty of people in Democratic Party leadership that would have preferred that he stepped aside. The warning signs were there like a year before the election that Biden was in deep shit with his approval numbers and he wasn't turning them around. It wasn't the establishment that forced Joe Biden to stay in the race. It was just Joe Biden himself stubbornly hanging in there.
But since Emma brought it up, let's address the fact that inaccurate predictions are totally okay, but only when she's wrong. In the lead up to the presidential race, Emma declared that her final electoral college prediction is that Harris sweeps all 7 swing states and ekes out a victory in Iowa. My only reservation is that I don't want to jinx the results, but I'm trying.
I assume this was after the Seltzer poll in Iowa. I mean, basically every pollster, like every major credible pollster, like, you know, the redistrict guy, Nate Silver, Nate Cohn, every pollster that I follow on Twitter was basically saying, like, this election looks like it's going to be one of the closest elections in modern history, and a slight deviation within the margin of error, one way or the other, could mean an entire spectrum range of possible outcomes, ranging from Kamala winning all 7 swing states to Trump winning all 7 swing states. And that is exactly what happened. In all 7 swing states, was there a single state where Donald Trump won by more than 2 or 3 points? I don't believe so. So, you know, if you want to dunk on people for predicting that Harris was going to win, I mean, I predicted she was going to win too. And I was using the same reasoning. The Seltzer poll definitely gave me a lot of hopium. The Seltzer poll filled me with unbridled optimism. I was like, what? Kamala Harris is up in 3 points in Iowa? This thing's over. And then the exact thing happened that the pollster said was going to happen. It was a slight deviation in the margin of error in favor of Trump. And he won all 7 swing states. That's what happened.
Trying to avoid the trappings of magical thinking. Well, Emma, the magical thinking is what led you to think that Harris would sweep all battleground states.
It wasn't magical thinking. It was rooted in the data. And her logic was, I mean, you could call it a bit optimistic, but it wasn't crazy. He ran the board, but the margins were slim. It was a close election. She seems to be of the opinion that Trump's victory was more substantial than it was.
Not that you cited superstitious jinxing. And of course, Trump, not Harris, went on to win all swing states and the popular vote. The average of polls clearly showed Harris trailing Trump. She ran a horrific campaign.
That's not true. I don't know what averages she was looking at. I don't know what average is she pointing to here? The average of polls had Kamala clearly trailing. What is she talking about? That's just simply not true. If anything, every single average, basically every single aggregate, with the exception of like RCP, but every other aggregate had Kamala with a slight edge in the popular vote and a slight favorite to win the Electoral College. And again, all these polls and aggregates predicted a very close race, which it was.
Stood for nothing, was unpopular with anyone who was paying attention, and wasn't even nominated through a democratic process. She was anointed. How's that for saving democracy? But you worked very hard to launder her reputation and sell her to Americans. So much so that I thought maybe, just maybe, all those Kamala Harris ads that interrupted your YouTube videos were possibly clouding your judgment. But you say you were delusional all on your own. And you know what? I'll take your word for it. But since we're on the topic of issuing corrections, one of your viewers is curious about something that you've said and whether you're gonna correct it. One of your viewers wants to know that since I admitted I was wrong, can Majority Report admit they were wrong, saying there wasn't a Venezuelan gang that took over an apartment complex in Colorado, even though residents were coming out and saying that was going on for months?
I haven't looked into this claim for so long. Venezuelan.
And Grossman is looking into this story for us. Dan, what have you learned?
Marisa, police here in Aurora, Colorado tell us they do not believe that there is any gang takeover here at the Lowry Apartments, the Edgett Lowry Apartments, which are right behind me, as some on social media have purported. Now, this all deals with Tren de Aragua. They are a well-known and powerful criminal organization from Venezuela. And this week, we heard for the first time residents who live in these apartments.
This video Hispanic at the Disco says Fitzsimmons was found to have hired a PR firm in Florida to spread the news about gang activity in the hope that it would blow up. He has a long-standing history of property fraud and lack of maintenance. Well, that's what the Snopes article suggested.
Showing men entering an apartment in Aurora, Colorado has been the subject of national scrutiny. We're using a still of the video that shows the men who appear to be armed at the door to an occupied apartment. An Aurora police spokesperson tells Scripps News the video is authentic and was recorded the night of August 18th. Shortly after, police say they used a search warrant to obtain the long gun seen in the video. Police say they found it while in
Actually, there is recent news. As of 6 days ago, the apartment complex where the alleged Venezuelan gang member stayed is closing down tomorrow. This is after what seems like a years-long dispute with the city about them being up to building code.
Investigating a nearby shooting that detectives believe involved the same people. The video has garnered the attention of former President Donald Trump, who has spoken about it on the campaign trail.
And we've got to be tough, because if you see what's happening in Aurora, Colorado today,
Isn't it interesting? So you have one video which shows 5 men entering an apartment complex in Aurora. It's unclear what's going on in that video, if it's connected to gang violence or anything. We can speculate, but there's no like confirmation. And then that turns into this Tren de Aragua Venezuelan gang have taken over an entire apartment complex. And then that turns into the Venezuelans are taking over apartment complexes in Aurora. And this all happened in the span of like a day. The story started as this one thing, and then it turned into something bigger, and then it turned into something even bigger, all in the span of one day. And again, there is no evidence right now. It could be possible. It's possible it's happening, but there is no evidence right now to substantiate the claim that Tren de Aragua are like wholesale taking over entire complexes in Aurora. There's no evidence that this is happening.
See that? Where Venezuelan gang.
Do you find conflict of interest within the sanctuary cities questionable? What do you mean? Aim for bushes? What do you, I'm just curious, what do you think sanctuary policies, like what do you think they actually are? When you hear sanctuary city, like what do you think is happening in those cities? I'm just curious.
Members have taken over parts of the city. They've taken over apartment houses.
This week,
all this from that one video, he turns it into that.
Who live at the complex held a news conference saying they haven't seen a large-scale gang presence or a takeover.
Here, none of us feel threatened. We don't feel threatened by any gangs. We feel threatened by the owner of this apartment who asks us constantly to pay a high rate.
Residents of the apartment complex said there are gangs, but they have not run into any members of the Tren de Aragua themselves. In a one-on-one interview with Scripps News Denver,
if there was a violent takeover of an entire apartment complex by a transnational criminal organization, a gang like Tren de Aragua, you would not expect that the residents there would get in front of cameras and say stuff like this. Like,
the city's mayor, Mike Kaufman, a Republican, said he went to the apartment complex accompanied by members of the Aurora Police Department to see it for himself.
It seems that in some of those criminal elements have come up here, and that for instance, Venezuela does not cooperate with the United States with our immigration services when it comes to sharing criminal histories. So it's difficult to vet people at the border.
Kaufman has tiptoed around questions about the gang's presence, saying it appears the building is not being run by management. But when pressed on whether he has received confirmation from authorities on whether TDA is present, he has said he is not.
I think people are excited about that, oh, it's a transnational gang. And, you know, I'm obviously concerned about it, but, you know, quite frankly, to me personally, what matters is we get these people off the street. In whatever affiliation they have, they're bad. I need them off the street.
Aurora police visited the site last Friday and said it is not under control of a gang. It did, however, say it may.
Well, I mean, unless you think the police are in on the deal here, or in on the, I mean, that kind of settles that, right? Like if the police showed up and went around and knocked on doors and like, you know, looked into it, and they came to the conclusion that apartment complex was not taken over.
Made an unrelated arrest of a member of the TDA gang in its city last week. That man has been turned over to ICE officials. Colorado's Governor Jared Polis, a Democrat, has also chimed in. While
he's kind of a libertarian, though, this Polis guy, kind of a libertarian weirdo.
Has not spoken directly about the validity of concerns about Tren de Aragua in Aurora. He said any and all state assistance is available to help if requested by local police and government.
So I don't know where Anna is getting this, like, we were right about the Colorado apartment complex thing. I can't find any evidence to support the claim that it was true, that they were taking over apartment complexes.
A Venezuelan gang that took over an apartment.
Maybe she's about to cite some source that's updated that I'm not aware of, and I'm just going to look stupid. We'll see.
Apartment complex in Colorado, even though residents were coming out and saying that was going on for months.
They literally said the opposite.
I haven't heard a peep from the Majority Report. Well, you know what? That's actually a great question. Majority Report seemed to direct their audience to harass me for months for accurately reporting that story.
Wait, no, the residents came out and said literally the opposite. The source is right there on the screen. Where?
When it's actually even though.
Are you talking about just some guy on Twitter? Is that what you mean?
Residents were coming out and saying that was going on for months. I haven't heard a peep from the Majority Report. Well, you know what? That's actually a great question. Majority Report seemed to direct their audience to harass me for months for accurately reporting that story. When that story was updated to include a horrific incident in which Tren de Aragua gang members literally kidnapped and tortured a couple that lived in that Aurora, Colorado apartment complex, Majority.
What's happening here? Hold on. It would help if she gave sources for these claims here. There's a story from 3 days ago. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol arrested a dangerous member of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua near the Mexican border in the Rio Grande Valley. This can't be the story that she's talking about. What is she talking about? 2 victims allegedly beaten, robbed, and tortured for hours by more than a dozen gang members inside a troubled Aurora apartment complex Monday night sat down exclusively with Denver 7 on Wednesday to share their harrowing story. 16 people, all suspected of being members or associates of Venezuelan prison gang Tren de Aragua, were in custody Wednesday in the wake of what authorities described as a brazen home invasion, burglary, and kidnapping. The victims, Venezuelan immigrants who wish not to be identified by name, said they were returning to the edge of Lowry complex from a shopping trip when they saw the lights on in their apartment unit. As they approached, a group of at least 8 armed people grabbed them and took them to a different unit. Victims said they were stabbed, beaten, robbed of everything they had. Their captors scoured their phones, stealing bank passwords and going through photos on social media accounts, the victim said. I thought I was going to die. I started praying silently, telling God if I had to go to take me to him. It wasn't until several hours later in the early morning hours on Tuesday that they were able to talk the suspects into letting them go. I heard one captor tell another that killing 2 people was going to cause too many problems. One of the victims recalled to Denver 7. The victims notified police a short time later once they had made it safely to a friend's house in a different part of town. In a lengthy media address Tuesday, Aurora Police Chief Todd Chamberlain commended the courage of the victims to come forward. He said the suspects in this case used a common tactic in choosing their target. Individuals involved in this type of activity, they victimize their own race and their own ethnicity, he said, adding that the reason they do is because they know because of their status they will not come forward to police. They said they've now been left with nothing as they have no food, clothing, or money. They're trying to figure out how to move forward. This is just describing an attack at that apartment complex. It's not describing the gang coming in and taking over the complex, like permanently. The claim from like Trump and MAGA and I guess Anna Kasparian is that these gangs are coming in and like literally taking over apartment complexes. I can't find any evidence that this is happening. Gang violence, that's one thing. But this other claim over here, that's a much bigger claim.
The report couldn't be bothered with it at all.
A Colorado apartment complex plagued by suspected Venezuelan gang activity in the spotlight again after a brutal kidnapping.
They were pistol whipped, they were beat, they were victimized, they were terrorized.
Wait, did she say that they were killed in this attack, by the way?
That story was updated to include a horrific incident in which Tren de Aragua gang members literally kidnapped and tortured a couple that lived in that Aurora, Colorado apartment complex. Majority Report couldn't be bothered with it at all.
A Colorado apartment complex plagued by
Well, it doesn't make your claim true. That's not what the claim is.
Suspected Venezuelan gang activity in the spotlight again after a brutal kidnapping.
They were pistol whipped, they were beat, they were victimized, they were terrorized.
Police say on Monday night, more than a dozen people approached a man and a woman, forcing them into an empty apartment where they were held against their will, and the man was stabbed. The 2 victims were released by the assailants after they promised not to call police, authorities say. Police say 19 people were initially detained in connection to the attack. Tonight, 16 are in Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody, according to an ICE spokesperson who says they are all Venezuelan nationals in the country.
Did Majority Report claim that like no gang violence took place in Aurora? I don't understand this dunk that Anna's going for here.
Without authorization.
How is she wrong? I'm not a fan of her, but it doesn't seem like she's wrong here. Again, her claim is that gangs have taken over apartment complexes, have like forced tenants out, and have just basically squatted in apartment complex. Not one, but multiple is what her claim is. But there's nothing in this story that makes what this story is demonstrating is that there was a couple that was kidnapped and then taken to their own home where they were tortured and robbed. You understand that's a very different claim than this gang has come in and kicked everybody out and taken over the complex.
Prior to that, the Aurora Police Department had already arrested 10 Tren de Aragua gang members from the same building. Wow, take a look at that. That's a lot of mugshots.
Wait, no, this isn't true. We just saw this mugshot. There was somebody, this guy was arrested, but not at the apartment complex. Let me double check my work. We just watched that video.
National correspondent Dan Grossman is looking into this story for us. Dan, what have you learned?
Marisa, police here in Aurora, Colorado tell us they do not believe that there is any gang takeover
right here
off the street.
Aurora police visited the site last Friday and said it is not under control of a gang. It did, however, say it made an unrelated arrest of a member of the TDA gang in its city last week. That man has been turned over to ICE.
He was not arrested at the complex. This guy right here, according to this report. And yet Anna is saying that all 10 of these people were arrested at the complex. Hold on. Aurora arrest. Let's do a quick little audit. Okay, this is, I guess, the exact same set of mugshots here. This is so embarrassing for Anna. These people are not from the complex. They were just the gang members that were arrested in the city.
Shots for a Venezuela. To that, the Aurora Police Department had already arrested 10 Tren de Aragua gang members from the same building.
Where is she getting that? From the same building? Did she just make that up? Is she lying? Or is she assuming this? These are just gang members that were arrested in the city. Hold on. Let me scroll through the rest of these here. Maybe there was one of them at the apartment complex? Larry Medina was arrested on July 10th by Aurora police in connection with the July 2 felony menacing at Whispering Pines condominiums. That is a separate apartment complex. That is a totally different complex. This guy was arrested at Fitzsimmons Place Apartments. Not the same apartment complex. Also a separate complex. Well, Whispering Pines seems to have a lot of gang members there, but not the one in question, unless she's confusing the two. Following a domestic, there was one person that was arrested by police following a domestic dispute with a weapon at Whispering Pines condominiums. There was an assault at Whispering Pines condominiums. This one makes no mention of any apartment complexes. There were various crimes in various districts in the city. This one was a dispute and assault over unpaid rent money at a separate complex. This one was just an outstanding warrant. Okay, so she got this completely wrong. Two of them have the same name. Oh, Jesus Christ. What is going on here? Hold on. Oh, but technically that's not her mistake though. It's this was according, I think they plucked this straight from this news article here. Are they different or are we just missing it? Oh, this one's, you guys are idiots. This one's spelled with a T and this one is spelled with a D. Yeah, she just got this wrong. She's just reporting on this incorrectly. This is embarrassing.
For a Venezuelan gang that definitely does not exist and definitely were not victimizing other migrants in addition to low-income Americans in that same apartment complex. That totally didn't happen.
It didn't. You just got the story wrong. This is so embarrassing. Jesus Christ.
Oh, but by the way, that's not all. Earlier this month, ABC News had this headline, quote, ICE carries out raid in Colorado, 100 members of Venezuelan gang targeted for arrests. Alleged members of Tren de Aragua were arrested at an Aurora.
You're taking, okay, that was the initial reporting. And then what ended up, subsequent reporting was that they found like 2 gang members. This is so embarrassing. Anna, you do this for a living. I don't understand. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement targeted more than 100 alleged members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua during an early morning raid at an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado. The operation yielded the arrest of just one of the alleged gang member, and 29 people were also detained. Another raid in Adams County, which is a separate county, I think, is Aurora and Adams County, took nearly 50 people living in the country illegally into custody, many of whom are connected with the Tren de Aragua gang from Venezuela. She took ICE's official, so like ICE came out with a statement like, we're going after 100 gang members. And then the story was updated. They found one. They found one gang member in this particular apartment, which I don't even think is the same apartment.
Apartment complex. So I'm just really curious.
What a buffoon. What an actual buffoon. This is so embarrassing. It's a 15-minute dunk and she's making herself look like a fucking idiot for anybody who takes 2 seconds to fact check her claims. This is so embarrassing, bro. It's like, I get so resentful at people that do this for a living and can't be bothered She's literally just skimming headlines here. I don't know if it's her writing these scripts or her team, but Jank, Anna, if you ever see this clip, if somebody ever clips it and sends it to him on Twitter, which I'm not advocating, how are you not embarrassed when you get stuff wrong like this? It literally takes 5 minutes to look into these claims. You don't have to just skim the headlines. It's just embarrassing. What a staggering level of incompetence. Dare to dream, guys. There's nothing you can't accomplish. If Anna Kasparian can become a successful news media pundit, then you can do anything. The sky's the limit. It's like she's just reading from someone's own researched Facebook post. She's like the living embodiment of a boomer Facebook post. This is so embarrassing. If I did something this shockingly bad, I would just scurry away from the internet in shame and then come back 2 months later begging for forgiveness. And it's just another Tuesday for Anna, I guess. This is so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. And it's especially embarrassing because she's going for this dunk. This is unbelievable. This is just a staggering level of incompetence. I just can't. Do you take pride in your work, Anna? For Christ's sakes, do you not really want to make sure that the shit that you're saying is accurate? I just don't get it. Of course, she's pivoting to MAGA or MAGA adjacent these days. And therefore, she knows she just doesn't have to worry about this, really. MAGA's not going to fact check her claims, for sure.
Super curious. Is ABC News funded by Polymarket? And that's why they're reporting these news stories? Are they making...
You didn't read the reporting, Anna. You clearly didn't read the reporting. You literally just looked at a headline. ABC reported something totally different than what you're saying to your audience right now. You dipshit. This is unbelievable.
Making it up? I mean, it's just, how many gang members do you need to take over a single apartment complex? But look, that's not all. Does Emma have...
It's so embarrassing. I feel embarrassed for her. I feel ashamed for her.
The integrity to admit that she was wrong to gaslight everyone about Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass's austerity measures, namely her decision to cut the budget for a fire department that had already been chronically short-staffed and underfunded. She put this up on Twitter. Lots of people are spreading this $17 million fire budget cut story, and it's just...
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As the Senate overwhelmingly voted yes.
You can call me Mr. Chairman if you want.
Well, I cannot be compelled to use your preferred pronouns as you have all voted.
Wait a minute. We're talking about preferred pronouns. A lot of people are. I prefer to be called Chairman French. That's my preferred pronoun.
I know, and you all voted that preferred pronouns cannot be compelled speech in SF 77. Anyway, my name is Britt Borrell.
Delicious compliance.
That's amazing. That's great. Hell yeah. More of that. We need more of that. It's so unbelievably funny. Okay.
It's not accurate. She then included a comical thread to bolster her claim. The thread made no sense. And it was clear that Emma didn't even bother to read the thread that she herself quote tweeted. She was even called out by other lefties like Sam Sachs, who correctly stated that Emma was sharing an incoherent thread she couldn't have possibly read. And then when told the actual facts, doubles down and accuses everyone of lying to help the right. She still hasn't deleted the post that was retweeted 5,000 times. I checked today, it's still up. And therein lies the heart of the issue with Majority Report. Anyone who has a thought or belief that deviates even slightly from their doctrine is just a right-winger. And right-wingers could never make any legitimate point.
Rumors about LA Fire Department budget cuts are missing context. Let's just skip down to the meat and potatoes. Flynn told us these numbers indicated not an overall year-over-year budget decrease of 17.6 million, but rather an increase of well over 53 million. The agreement further allocated approximately 39.4 million, 45.4 million, and 42.2 million in each subsequent fiscal year, respectively. Crowley, the fire chief, also made note of sworn salaries in a July 22nd, 2024 memorandum saying the 2024 to 2025 fiscal year's budget showed the lower figure for one-time adjustments to various sworn salary accounts among other reasons, including removing one-time expenses from the adopted budget. So once again, Anna is wrong. Emma was correct. Anna is wrong.
Points, right? Or belief that deviates even slightly from their doctrine is just a right-winger. And right-wingers could never make any legitimate points, right? We must all worship the all-sanctimonious majority report and their ideological dogma at all costs, even when there's evidence proving them wrong. Although I can't decide if people like Emma are really this cultish with their politics or if they're just terrified by their own audience.
DSA Josh, I live on the west side of LA. All the criticism that conservatives are directing towards Mayor Karen Bass is 100% motivated by white nationalism and violent misogyny. They're fascists, full stop.
Hey, DSA Josh, you're unhinged. And guess what? I'm elated that you watch Majority Report. They deserve you.
Well, that claim seems to be a bit wild, but I mean, I don't know how that relates to Sam or Emma.
As for TYT, we're going to correct the record when we get something wrong.
Okay, you have the perfect opportunity. Okay, Anna, this week, this is going to go up on YouTube. Feel free to share it with Anna. This week, I want to see you correct the record on the Young Turks about your patently incorrect assertions with respect to the apartment complexes in Aurora. You got that story blatantly wrong. You didn't read the ABC article. And calling out Emma Vigeland's claim about the fire department budget cuts, which you were wrong about. And just a cursory Google search would have shown you that you're wrong, that you got it wrong. They did not get their budget slashed by $17.6 million. You were wrong.
I'm positive it will happen again in the future because we're human. And guess what? Humans make mistakes.
Seems to be a pattern with you, a pattern of brazen carelessness. You don't seem to take pride in your work. I can't believe, I mean, this whole video was so embarrassing.
Emma is also susceptible to making mistakes. And that would be totally fine if she showed a modicum of humility and corrected.
The level of irony we've reached at this point, we are just in another dimension. We have transcended this physical universe and we have physically warped to a completely alternate dimension at this point with the level of irony that we're currently experiencing with Anna saying that Emma needs to have humility when she gets something wrong.
Herself. Instead, she plays the role of hall monitor. She polices what one can see.
Again, Hutch, you just said every swing state Harris lost was close. Was it not? And did I not pose the question to chat? Like, wait, did any of the states, were any of them outside the margin of error? Maybe Arizona was like 5 points. Arizona was 5.5 points, which, was that not outside the margin of error? So if I just do like 538, 2024 Arizona presidential, they had it at Trump 48.9%, Harris 46.8%, and the actual results were pretty close to that, 52.2%. So they were about 3.5 points, which would be in the area of the margin of error. What about Georgia? Was Georgia outside was Georgia like 5 points? Georgia was a pretty close race, less than 2 points. North Carolina? Anyways, we're getting sidetracked. It was a close election. I don't know who I'm arguing with in chat, but it was a close race.
Say what they should believe, who they can talk to, and what they can talk about. It sure is ironic for someone who claims to loathe cops so much. But that's the role she and others like her play in the left wing, and everyone's sick of it.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. I really appreciate it.
Jesus, what an that's one of the most embarrassing videos I've ever seen in my life. The confidence with which she made her points and made these incorrect assertions is astounding. Just astounding. That was so shameful. If she had any ounce of shame or capacity for shame, I mean, that was unbelievable.